Senior Property Manager with Sheargold Property Developments. I'd like to introduce to you Heather Boardman, Nee Smith. Heather is one of the daughters of Jean and Bruce Smith, who were the former owners of Coral Vale Homestead, being 57 Smith's Lane at Wongawilli. And we've invited Heather along to give us a bit of her history and her life at Coral Vale. So I'll kick off by just saying if you can describe the property and what was here when you were living here, Heather.
Sure. Well, we were born into this house, the five children of Jean and Bruce. They'd moved into the house when they were married, and then all of us were born here. My pop and my dad's father, Ted, lived in a house that he'd built when he got married, and then Mum and Dad had this home. There's a dairy and a property all around, and a little village, a one street village at Wongawilli at that time, when I was born in 1954.
Right, and with you touched on the dairy there. Have you got memories of the dairy and what it brought to the family in terms of, you know, all the kids participating in it, or was it just your dad?
Yeah, the dairy was the whole focus. The house kind of had to take second place, and I guess this is only a small house for 7 people, but we had the whole property to enjoy as well. The dairy was a lot of work for Dad and for Mum, and they managed and had to balance that. My brothers Charles and Rod also worked on the dairy, and particularly Rod, he was in the dairy for the whole duration of their time here, and he worked extremely hard there too.
And where did you sell the milk, the produce?
Yeah, there was a milk factory, Dairy Farmers Milk Factory at Dapto. Initially they were cans, and there was a trolley, and it ran on little railway tracks from the dairy building out to Smith's Lane. And the cans were put onto the trolley and taken out, and following that there was a bulk vat installed. But the milk used to be come and collected by a truck, initially the cans and then later a tanker. The truck also brought our mail to us. Okay. And but those cans were sometimes a bit of a problem, and one time I was having a ride on the cans sitting on top of the cans before I went to school, sitting on top of the cans out to the truck and then coming back in, and I fell off and was knocked out on the railway lines. My poor dad thought I was out to it and gone, and carried me tearfully down to the house, but thankfully I came round in just a few stitches that I'm not quite sure if that's what's had an impact on my life, but I recovered well, so that was good.
Very good. Yeah. Keeping on with the outside the curtilage of the homestead, were there any other activities? Like, did you have horses? Did you have chicken? Any other kind of produce that?
We had chooks that we needed to collect the eggs, and they were down on the tank side, on the other side of the house. And so we'd collect the chicken eggs. My pop had a really big, at the little black house, he had a huge collection of chooks. He had silkies and all sorts of varieties that he liked to maintain. We had a pony, and her name was Trixie, and she had a lovely brown horse with white spots on her rump. And when we bought her, she could already do tricks, so she'd lift up her front hoof and shake hands, and she would count. She'd stomp a foot to count, which is great. My other memory of a horse was my pop's Sonny Boy. He was a very tall and big horse, and Pop rode him everywhere. My Pop didn't die till he was 93, and he was riding his horse all of that time. He'd ride it down to the village and all around the property. He just loved his horse. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. And what about in terms of the natural features, the topography? Do you have any recollection of, in terms of gardens or the trees?
It was quite a pleasant garden. So we called the entrance on the dairy side was the back, and where we look out now here to the east was the front. And there was quite a pretty little garden around the front. And on the veranda here that we're looking out to now, there were Banksia roses. They climbed up, and there was a yellow one on one side and a white one on the other, and they formed like a screen at either end. But we just played out there all the time. Right. There was a pear tree there, and just to the right of that, it must have been a big pine tree of some kind. We used to get the cones out, the pine cones, and we call them monkey nuts. So we'd get the monkey nuts, and we'd smash them to get the little nuts outside, and we just really, really loved those. And there was also a row of pear trees right down the bottom of this hill here, right on the where the old railway line used to go through, there was a row of pear trees there as well. So trees were really significant on the property.
Okay, and can you recall, like, there's natural waterways down here, the creeks. Can you remember any of that sort of?
Yeah, the creek between us and Mondawilli, where there's been a huge bridge built now. That was a great creek to play in. We'd go down the side of the house. Sometimes we'd take a wine flagon that a sherry flagon that Mum and Dad got from Rutherglen. They used to order it in. They weren't big drinkers, but they liked their sherry. Yeah. And we'd get the empty ones and take them down and scoop up the little fish and keep them until they died, and then we'd get another lot. Other times we just went round and we dammed the creek and did that stuff. But the creek was also our water source. So the water was pumped up from the creek to the house. So if the floods came, and that's pretty familiar to us all right now, this year when we've had a lot of floods, they had to get down there, and I remember one time waking up in the middle of the night, and Mum and Dad were heading off down the hill in their raincoats and things, and they had to pull the pump up out of the water so it didn't flood, that it didn't wreck the motor, because if it did, we had no water. Yeah. And the fun that we had with the floods though was if it flooded across the road, Dad would come across in the tractor and pick us up from school, and that was heaps of fun.
Yeah, it would be.
Good.
And you just touched on there about the home. What sort of memories do you have of the inside, your routine, waking up in the morning, the kitchen, the fireplace, the bedrooms? Can you share a bit of that sort of?
Well, there's
memory?
two heat sources. One was a little cosy that sat in a fireplace in the lounge room, and then there was a slow combustion stove in the kitchen, and that needed to be heated up every day because it was how we heated the water. The stove was the water heater, and so we used coke to light the stove. And that was just constant, and in summer it was horrendous. It was just so hot, and I don't know how Mum managed it, because the kitchen was also the dining area, so with 7 people sitting around a table and a bit of kitchen around the edge, it was pretty intense, but she could always create something out of nothing, and that kitchen was really a focus for the family and anybody who came onto the property, so tradespeople or people that were doing herb testing, they would all come in and have breakfast with us. Yeah. So that was really a highlight of the day. Okay.
And in our earlier discussion, you mentioned something about a fire. Could you share?
Yeah. One time we were getting a bit older, and somebody came to work on the dairy, and so they put their caravan at the front, and they were sort of keeping an eye on us kids. And we used to have to light the fire to get it going, to do our cooking. And somebody went up to get some fuel to get the coke started. You needed something to start it. And instead of getting the diesel, they got the petrol, and we had a little fruit can, a standard peach tin, and we'd fill up and put a bit of fluid just to get the fire cracking. As we did, the tin went to tip the fuel onto the fire, and the flames jumped back into the can. The can was dropped on the ground. The tablecloth started to light up.
Oh no.
We were able to get it out, and then we had to plot what to say to Mum and Dad when they came back. So we had a big conversation, and I'm not sure whether this is a sensible thing to have done, but I recommended everybody that we cry. I thought if everybody cries and we look contrite and distressed about it, we'd get away with it, and we did. But I don't know how the house got away with it, because it didn't go up in flames, and an all timber house like this could easily have done that, so we were very fortunate.
Indeed. What were your neighbours? Have you got memories about your neighbours?
Yes.
What they did and your sort of impressions?
Yeah, I found a paper just the other night. This has been fabulous for me, looking up and seeing a bit of the history, and I found a paper that my mum's written about why 5 Smith families ended up on adjoining properties around here, and it's fascinating as they came out from England and then they all settled, and how they ended up with land around this area. But on the next hill was the Haug family, and they had a beautiful home and an orchard, and we love to go over there. So we just have to go down the hill in front of the dairy and up across them to the next peak. So Mum and Dad could watch us crossing across back and forth, and there was my friend Rodney was the same age over there. So we'd go over there and play. And they had, as well as the creek we had on this side of us, on their side, on the property over there, which is at the end of Sheaves Road, there was also a waterhole there and we could go swimming over there as well. So
Lovely.
it was great.
So in terms of the proximity of having family all around you, you had a sense of village, community in that immediate sense. And perhaps that could be a segue into talking about the wider community,
Sure.
perhaps St Luke's, Brownsville, the shops and that sort of...
Yeah, it hit me just recently. I was on the Lost Wongawilli or Wongawilli residence site, and I was just thinking about what we had when we lived here. I was here from 1954 to 1962, no, I don't know, 1972, 54 to 72. And when we lived here, we had a school. There was another school over at West Apto at Sheaves Road. We had a church up in Wongawilli that was a branch church of the big one at Brownsville.
Okay.
We had a shop and a post office next door to the school, and a telephone booth, as well as a tennis court at the mine manager's residence. So the facilities, it was just different times, and people didn't travel so much, I guess, when it was established. And so it was a great sense of engagement and involvement, and so we're at the little school. There was only 24 to 28 kids at the one teacher's school. So you're in a classroom with your brothers and sisters. The families all knew one another. Yeah. So it was a great feeling. That's
a great reflection of your time here, and I want to thank you for your time, for having shared all that with us. And just in summary, I guess, for what Sheer Gold property developments have done with the site, how would you summarise? Has it been a legacy that you're proud of that's been developed here, or how do you say it?
That's I feel quite emotional about that. When the property was sold way back in 1999 to these, well, first to people who owned the temple, and then at Berkeley, and then it was sold on to Sheer Gold. And we're just stunned with the work that's been done here, with the preservation of community and the fostering of community, and talking to local residents who've been part of the journey, who started out quite early on the property. They said that everything that was promised in retaining heritage here has been done. And so many people say, oh, well, people talk about heritage and history and it doesn't happen. But anybody who's seen what's happened here can see that it's really genuine and it's creating a heart for the community.
That's great.
I met some young parents the other day when I was having a coffee up at the new cafe, and they'd walked up and they said, this is wonderful, we can gather here and meet. And I just think to bring community back into development is fantastic. And we really, as a family, we're just so thankful, because this house was run down when we lived here because the farm counted more than the house did. It was a place to gather and we enjoyed doing that, and we had lots of people in the home, but it wasn't schmick. To see it all schmick is fantastic, and it's such a joy, and we're just very thankful for the development that's happened here on this property.
Wow, well look, thank you for that. And a lot of the credit for the vision goes to Michael Sheargold, because he's been striding in ensuring that the integrity of the site and what's done with it remains for the community and for generations to come. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.